identify your codependent traits, and also recover so your relationships no longer have to feel like torture and imprisonment. This is an intervention. You are living a lie. Don't freak out. I'm just joking. But it kind of is. You know, for some of us, this tree cutter is going to make me lose my mind. Hopefully the tree cutter is not getting into the audio too much. I apologize, but I'm not refilming. Okay, welcome back. I'm Yanique Bell, and I'm here to help you experience soul deep love. Okay, so we're going to be tackling a pretty big topic today. It's codependency. We're going to be covering what codependency is, a little bit about the history of the term, because while it's widely spread currently and we talk about codependency a lot, you may not actually know the context of the origins of the word, and it's actually pretty interesting and gives us insight into how codependency develops. And so if you have a feeling that you may be codependent, or maybe you've seen another video and you're like, I think I have that, but you're not sure, this video is for you. And I'm also going to be giving you my personal definition at the very end, because I actually want to emphasize a specific experience around codependency that brings compassion and understanding into it, as someone who has, been on a many year long recovery journey from codependency. So I know a thing or two. So the reason why I wanted to tackle this topic is because in this space of soul deep lovers, it's what I'm calling our tribe. Feel free to join us, subscribe. But in the space of people who are looking to love deeply, love others deeply, and love themselves deeply, I tend to find that a lot of us are people pleasers, codependents, and empaths. We actually tend to have a background of abuse and just difficulties in relationships, being taken advantage of. And so I want to make sure that you know why currently your relationships may feel as difficult as they do, and give you some tools to reframe that. Because what you may be thinking is empathy, like just your natural inborn empathy, may actually be codependency, and it may actually be something that is destroying your relationships and also destroying you. That sounds dramatic, but it's true. And so this is going to be a multi-video series. We're going to start with the definition of codependency, and then in the next video, I want to help you to get clues for how you can spot codependency within your relationship if you're unsure. And then I want to get into what it actually looks like to recover from codependency, and the tools that have helped me greatly and that I believe will help you as well. Because I want you to actually experience your authentic empathy and love for others outside of codependency. Because what you may be thinking is empathy, that's not actually how your deeper self, as I like to call it, the eternal you, the soul of your being, it's not how they see it. I hate to say it. I hate to break it to you. You are living a lie. I was too. It's okay. It's okay. That's why this is a baby intervention, and it might just turn things around in your life and kick up a lot of dust. All right. So listen with caution. A lot changes when you decide to heal your codependency. Okay, so if I haven't said it already, I'm Yanique Bell. I not only have experience in healing this for myself, but in also helping others to heal. I'm a certified intimacy coach, and I've been at this for over 5 years now. So I'm really excited to help you identify your codependent traits and also recover so your relationships no longer have to feel like torture and imprisonment and cruelty. Okay, and disaster and horror. It's almost spooky season. And there's nothing spookier than a codependent relationship. All right, that's enough. Okay, so codependency is a term coined by the Alcoholic Anonymous community, AA, and it was coined in around the late 70s / early 80s. It's not exactly, there's not a pinpoint date. It just became a term that was used to address the flip side of alcoholism, which if you have the alcoholic, the other side of that is everyone else that they encounter and their loved ones, people who are close to them. And so the AA community was observing that not only were alcoholics suffering from their chemical dependency, but the people around them who were closest to them were also similarly suffering. They felt like their life was out of control. And so if alcoholics were chemically dependent, then their partners and loved ones were co-chemically dependent, hence codependent. And so early on, this term codependency was used to really describe this very specific scenario. It was describing those who felt a compulsion to be in relationship with a chemically dependent person. And when you have this compulsion to be in relationship with a chemically dependent person, that comes along with other traits, other experiences, and a loss of control, because you're basically orienting your life around someone who is out of control, don't have control over their behavior. In this early use of the term, codependents met these 3 criterias. 1, they were people who were in a romantic or marital relationship with an alcoholic. 2, one or more of their parents or grandparents were alcoholics. And 3, they were raised in an emotionally repressed family. But it actually became clear by the mid-1980s that this term codependency could actually apply to other individuals, and the behaviors were being seen in other relationship dynamics. And so in the mid-1980s, the term also came to describe those who were habitually attracted to or in relationship with narcissists and or addicts in general. It was clear that whatever was being experienced by these people, that it was like a compulsion. They couldn't help but be in relationship with these kinds of people. This dynamic just sucked them in. And so their codependency became their reaction to being in these really tumultuous relationships. For the most part, codependency as a term was mainly used by the AA community, but then it became popularized due to the works of authors like Melody Beattie, author of Codependent No More, Claudia Black, John Friel, Terry Kellogg, and Pia Melody. Now, my core introduction to codependency and healing and recovery actually comes from Melody Beattie's book, Codependent No More, and so that is the work that I will be focusing on in today's video. But definitely check out those other authors so that you can learn from different perspectives. So Melody Beattie is actually someone who started her journey as an alcoholic, and so she writes on codependency at first. Her first experience of it was actually in seeing how the partners of other AA members or just people in her life, how they seem to have this obsession, is what she calls it, in trying to control this other person, trying to control the addict and their behavior. And so I'm going to read a little passage here because I think it's really illuminating. The best way to really understand codependency is to look at the various traits more so than just the definition. We'll come to the definition at the very end because you'll start to see the through line, but I want you to notice that there's such a wide variety in how codependency shows up. But okay, so this is Beattie. She's a member of the AA community. She's in recovery, and she's just like, this is what I'm noticing. She said these are people who felt responsible for the entire world, but they refused to take responsibility for leading and living their own lives. I saw people who constantly gave to others but didn't know how to receive. I saw people give until they were angry, exhausted, and emptied of everything. I saw some give until they gave up. And I think this line really sums it up. Aching, complaining, and trying to control everyone and everything but themselves. It's kind of a harsh, it's kind of a harsh take, but it's so true. Gosh, I remember reading this and feeling gutted. Like, yeah, that is actually exactly what I'm feeling. Like, just this feeling of, I can't help but help. I need to help them. And almost like I can't even focus on my own life because I have this compulsion. You know, here in the beginning stages, she really describes it as an obsession, but this is the shift I want to make in my definition, because I don't think it's really so much an obsession. And okay, so that's like her initial kind of harsh, right? They're just so obsessed with us. They're just so obsessed with us addicts, they can't even like focus on themselves. Which I think is like, maybe that's one way to look at it. But like I said, I like to take it in a different direction. But she does end up changing and having more compassion for codependents when she herself gets caught up and sucked into that trap of trying to save, help, caretake other addicts in her life. So let's hear her change of tune. By then, I had been sober for a while. I was beginning to understand myself, but I didn't understand codependency. I tried, but couldn't until years later, when I became so caught up in the chaos of a few alcoholics that I stopped living my own life. I stopped thinking, I stopped feeling positive emotions, and I was left with rage, bitterness, hatred, fear, depression, helplessness, despair, and guilt. At times, I wanted to stop living. I had no energy. I spent most of my time worrying about people and trying to figure out how to control them. I couldn't say no to anything but fun activities if my life depended on it, which it did. My relationships with friends and family members were in shambles. I felt terribly victimized. I lost myself and didn't know how it had happened. I didn't know what had happened. I thought I was going crazy. And I thought, shaking a finger at the people around me, it's their fault. Okay, let's just take that in. I'm smiling because it's so, like I can remember reading this. And when I made it through that book, I even feel like my voice has gone down an octave. It's like sitting in my soul. When I went through that book, I literally filled so many journal pages. And we'll get into the traits because I really recommend that you read this. I would say this is an amazing place to start in your codependent recovery journey. But I just remember by the time I had gotten through and I had journaled on things in reading this book, I had moments where it felt like this lifelong fog, like literally like murkiness in my mind. I had finally burst through the clouds. And of course, you know, in the incoming years, I would go back in and then I'd have moments where I burst through and then, you know, until I was kind of skimming through the clouds and kind of, you know, finding my way. And now I feel so pretty lucid. I had a lot to unpack and understand because not only was I dealing with, you know, having a parent that's an alcoholic, but also I had to go through the realization of that other piece, which Melody doesn't cover in her book. She doesn't cover that history of the term of codependency and how it began to be applied to also those who who are in narcissistic relationships. So when I first read it, I was only looking at it through the lens of if you have a caregiver that's an alcoholic or have some type of chronic illness. And that narcissism piece is huge. It's huge. So if you're also experiencing that, you've got a longer journey, right? You're going to be probably dipping in and out of those clouds for a while, for many years, like I did. But I want you to know that those moments of piercing through and like, I've never had been able to have a clear thought that wasn't centered around other people my entire life. Okay. And so she experiences it just from, being in AA, and I'm sure she began to have friends who were addicts or recovering or trying to help those around her who were. And so I don't remember her history. I kind of skimmed this book for this video, so I didn't read through fully her backstory. I don't think she mentions, or maybe she does. I think she might have some history of alcoholism or addiction in her family, which is typical for addicts. But her experience of codependency largely came from, later in life, having those relationships. And I would say that addicts are codependents, but I get it. From her perspective, she may not have identified with that because to her dependency is first and foremost with the chemical, the substance. But I hold a very soft and dear place for those of us who grew up in these environments and developed codependency from birth, because when it's all you've known, it is very hard to feel out what is wrong. It's very hard to break free because it's all you've known. And this is why I want to cover what true empathy is, because a lot of us develop and identify as empaths. We develop into being highly sensitive and empathetic people, but we don't recognize that what we're experiencing isn't actually empathy. It's a compulsion, similar to an addict who feels they can't resist a substance. Mentally, we can't resist these relationships and these dynamics and these impulses to save, to caretake, to manage. And I just want to hold every single child and adult who has experienced that. It is not fair. Okay, so let's take a look at another experience, just so we can know that we're not alone and kind of listen for those pain points that resonate, right? So if this is starting to hit for you, if you're like, yeah, I've been feeling that way, right? Usually it's easier to know it. So I'll say this, if you are one of those who have lived with this, right? Like you've been programmed, this has been put into your programming since you were a child, then sometimes it's like you can't even identify that you have it from hearing the traits because you don't think that that's what's going on, especially if you're dealing with narcissistic people. Oftentimes they role switch, they blame shift, they project, and so you end up feeling like the victimizer, like the person that's controlling instead of being controlled, if that makes sense. You end up feeling like the person who is doing the wrongdoing. You end up being so separated from reality that you can't see yourself clearly. You can't see the situation clearly. You can't see when you are actually being victimized and told that you're the problem maker. So it's really tricky when you're in the actual position, but you can identify based on the feeling, right? Like I resonate with that frustration. Okay, so this is Jessica from chapter 1, and I just want to share some of her feelings. And so Jessica is married to an alcoholic, and I really like this line. She says, "I work and you play," meaning her husband. "I work and you play. I worry and you relax. I care and you don't. You feel good. I hurt. Damn you." And if you've been in codependent relationships, that might sound familiar, right? I have to do all the work. I'm the one who's always stressed out. You get to relax. You get to have your fun. And even if that's not fully true, that sentiment may resonate with you. That feeling of like, right? Like, That's largely what her marriage felt like. And now in this passage, her husband has started to go to AA meetings, and she's had some big revelations. Let's take a look. "But I was beginning to wonder. He had been sober and attending Alcoholics Anonymous for 6 months. He was getting better. I wasn't. Was his recovery really enough to make me happy? So far, his sobriety didn't appear to be changing the way I felt, which was, at age 32, dried up, used up, and brittle. What had happened to our love? What had happened to me? 1 month later, I began to suspect what I would soon learn was the truth. By then, the only thing that had changed was I felt worse. My life had ground to a halt. I wanted it to end. I had no hope that things would get better. I didn't even know what was wrong. I had no purpose except to care for other people, and I wasn't doing a good job of that. I was stuck in the past and terrified of the future. God seemed to have abandoned me. I felt guilty all the time and wondered if I was going crazy. Something dreadful, something that I couldn't explain, had happened to me. It had snuck up on me and ruined my life. Somehow I had been affected by his drinking, and the ways I had been affected had become my problems. It no longer mattered whose fault it was. I had lost control. T. So I really like that juxtaposition with Melody's story and Jessica's, because Melody, in that passage I read, it ended with, I didn't know what had happened. And of course, Melody is retelling Jessica's experience from her own vantage point, so we can hear some of Melody's voice in Jessica's story. But I do like that juxtaposition of, I didn't know what had happened to me. I thought I was going crazy, both same feeling. And I thought, shaking a finger at the people around me, it's their fault. And Jessica comes to the realization, somehow I had been affected by his drinking, and the ways I had been affected had become my problems. It no longer mattered whose fault it was. I had lost control. And I really think that's pretty key in recovery, is that realization of, yeah, I have been affected, but this is now my problem, and I'm the only one who can solve it. It literally doesn't matter how it started. It's now something that is within me that has affected my life. Other chaos is now coming into my life, and now I need to solve this for me and get back into control of my own life. And so I've made like a quick list here of some of the traits that Melody describes as belonging to codependency: obsessing, controlling, obsessive helping or caretaking, low sense of self-worth, self-loathing, self-repression, carrying a lot of anger and guilt, tolerance for bizarre behavior, being other-focused, meaning focusing more on others than self, and developing self-abandonment, communication problems, intimacy problems, and whirlwind relationships as a result. And the number one trait, though, that stood out to me personally is becoming self-destructive. We're going to pin that word, self-destructive, because though it is awful, though it sounds terrible, and it is a problem, it actually holds within it a piece, a key to recovering from codependency, which we will discuss next week. So pinned it, filed it, coming back to it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, this is going to be a multi-video series. And so Beatty goes on to list several pages of characteristics of codependency that she's categorized under, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12 categories. Y'all, it's like page after page after page. And these categories are caretaking, low self-worth, repression, obsession, controlling, denial, dependency, poor communication, weak boundaries, lack of trust, anger, sex problems, and miscellaneous. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Because it's so, how it shows up is so varied. And it really speaks to the root of codependency, which we're getting to. Stick with me. I know we've taken a long-winded route. We're getting to the definition, but hopefully all this context is helping, because we didn't fall out of a coconut tree. Okay, whatever. I think this all really helps in understanding codependency, because codependency is a general term for how we're oriented in our relationships. It's not to describe a specific behavior. It's actually to describe an orientation. So how you're approaching, how you're entering into relationship, your kind of lens. It's describing that. It's describing how you're oriented in your relationship. And so the actual behaviors and characteristics are going to be very similar, like across the board, right? We can all relate to like some of this, but the very specifics of it are going to be unique to you. And even looking at the list, if you do get the book Codependent No More, you will even recognize that sometimes the characteristics are complete opposites because it's about how we're reacting to the relationship, how we are oriented, and the reactions that it's bringing out of us. And so, for example, some codependents are described as passive, while others are aggressive. Some are extremely responsible, while others are extremely irresponsible. And so you can't look at the surface characteristics to spot a codependent. It's more so the orientation and the underlying wound. Codependents are reacting. We're reacting to abnormal people and abnormal human behavior. We are reacting to the abnormalcy. And so how each of us reacts depends on a myriad of things. And this is why I say get a journal when you're reading and you're starting to unpack your codependency and look at what is driving it for you. You'll want to get a journal and you'll want to list out. I did this myself and I have pages and pages and pages. Y'all, this was about, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I was going to dig out the journal from where I've got it, but I can't even remember where it is. I know I have it, but I literally wrote pages and pages and pages and pages. I had so many of these traits, and I even looking through the list, I was able to pull and identify ones that weren't listed, but I knew was coming from the same compulsion, the same wound. And so you'll want to do this for yourself, because in order to understand your codependency and identify how you are specifically reacting to the abnormalcy and reacting to others, you'll want to identify how it's showing up specifically for you. So I made a list of the traits that I resonated with, and also ones that I knew came from the same impulse to take care of others. And I also made a list of the changes I wanted to make. I made a list of my recovery goals, and when I tell you, I listed probably 100 things. And it was really refreshing, because in making this video, I went through the list again and I pulled how many of those still I needed to work on, and it's a short list, y'all. I'm very proud of myself. It's under 10 items. It's 7 items. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but your girl has been doing the work. Hopefully by the end of your own recovery journey, you'll be able to look back on that list and be like, I don't have a problem with that anymore. I don't feel that. I don't know that. I knew that, but I don't know that anymore. You see what I'm saying? Okay, those are the goals. All right, so I'm just going to give you, it's kind of a long list. Here are some of the what I perceive as the commonly held traits from BD's list. But again, it's going to differ from person to person. But if you want to just jot down some of these, maybe pause the video in between and being like, okay, yes, I have that. And I noticed this as well. Get your journal out, get your note app out. Let's do it. Settle in. Thinking or feeling responsible for other people. Very common. It's feeling responsible for their thoughts, their emotions, their actions, choices, wants, needs, well-being, lack of well-being, and their ultimate destiny. Oh my God, that takes me back. I was definitely in those trenches. Feeling anxiety, pity, and guilt when other people have a problem. Had that. Feeling compelled to help said person solve their problems, i.e. giving unsolicited advice. I am still working on that. Rapid fire suggestions. Yep, this is the thing that I need to work on. Needing to fix their feelings. Next, people pleasing and overgiving. Difficulty receiving. This can be compliments, money, gifts, etc., etc. Attracting and feeling attracted to needy people. Blaming others for your predicament. Abandoning routines, desires, or self to immediately respond to someone else's needs and desires. Blaming yourself for everything. Not feeling enough. Having a fear of rejection. Taking things personally. Feeling excessive guilt and toxic shame. Suicidal ideation and depression, believing good things will never happen for you, feeling unlovable and undeserving of love, repressing your emotions, numbing your emotions and or your self-expression, feeling low energy, rumination, loss of time and structure due to obsessing over other people's behaviors, trying to control events and people, or feeling controlled by events and people, in denial about problems, consuming your emotions, for example, through overeating, shopping, etc., rather than feeling your emotions, an inability to find happiness from within, and a host of things that I have personally summarized as looking for love in all the wrong places. So performing, perfectionism, looking for love from emotionally unavailable people, from abusive people, etc. Having a lack of boundaries and a lack of integrity, especially in communication. So not meaning what you say, not saying what you mean, not speaking up for what you want, etc., etc. You don't trust yourself, your emotions, your decisions, God or the universe, or other people. You have issues processing anger. So whether that's feeling your own anger or processing other people's anger. You feel like whenever anger comes up, the relationship is going to end. And a host of characteristics that I have classified as inauthentic sexual expression. So this is where sex or a lack thereof becomes an extension of your people-pleasing, self-punishment, or it becomes a means of punishing your partner or escaping your problems. And so this is where sex becomes more of a tool in your relationship rather than a natural expression of the love that you have for yourself and for your partner. Being loyal to others even when it's harming you. Withdrawal and isolation. And when codependency progresses, you yourself may develop an addiction, a chronic illness, an eating disorder, or mental disorder. And so I've listed a lot of things here, and like I said, BD's list is for pages and pages and pages. It's quite long. And to see it listed like that, it really becomes eye-opening, because at least I know for me, I could see how all these little fires, it felt like I had all these little fires in my life, and inside of myself, things that I blamed myself for, and I was starting to hone in on like the center. I was getting into the eye of it and like, okay, this is all connected. Oh my god. Yeah, so it's very illuminating, and how all of these characteristics and behaviors overlap with your life experience, other traumas that you've gone through. It's going to create a unique blend of things that you'll want to unpack, hopefully with someone who can help you do that work. That's why I'm here. And that's also why these videos are here. So if you want to work with me, I do have private coaching spots open. You can learn more at yaniquebell.com/coaching. As a somatic healer, my work with you is really going to be looking at how this is stored in your body and helping you to find an internal locus of control and safety and pleasure and happiness and joy, learning how to source all of that from within so that you have the capability to resist the impulse, resist the compulsion, and not even so much resist the compulsion, but the compulsion stops being there. I'll also help you access your deeper self. This is the spiritual you, the timeless you, the part of you that is connected to source, and be able to gauge what love really looks like in your situation. What would love really do? Because when we talk about the love that flows from your deeper self, this is not like the love in the movies, right? It's not like clinging or even trying to save others. It's true love that includes you within your own heart. And so it's not just taking in someone else's chaos and misfortune, it's also wanting the best for you. And so if you want to cut ahead and get started on unpacking this and healing from this right now, I've got 2 spots available. Claim them at yaniquebell.com/coaching, and also join me for the next 2 videos, maybe 3 videos. We'll see. And so what is codependency ultimately? Here's Melody Beattie's definition. A codependent person is one who has let another person's behavior affect him or her, and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior. So what I like about this definition is she intentionally makes it broad enough so that it's encompassing those who do have codependent traits but aren't necessarily in a romantic relationship or marital relationship with specifically an alcoholic. Because when you're codependent, it's an orientation, right? It's how you're approaching not just your romantic relationship, but likely just about every other relationship. So the other person you're in relationship with could be a parent, could be a child, it could be a lover, it can be a spouse, a sibling, a client, a friend. It doesn't have to be specifically an alcoholic. It could be someone addicted to something else. And it can also be a normal person, someone who's just normal, largely normal, who doesn't have any addictions at all. I eat 3 meals and I'm well adjusted. Anyways, Lilo and Stitch reference. And so in this definition, Melody is highlighting that the problem isn't the other person. It's not the alcoholic, it's not their addiction, it's actually how this person, you as the codependent person, is oriented to the relationship. And this is really key. I know it's frustrating when you first hear it because you're like, well, I wouldn't be this way if they weren't X, Y, and Z. I wouldn't have to do everything if they were helping, or I wouldn't have to if blah, blah, blah. But when we come at it from that angle, all of the power remains in the other person. The other person has all of the power, not just in this relationship, but in your life. The proverbial other person always has all of the power. And so you can never gain control of your life if you're going at it from that perspective. With that orientation, with that lens, you will forever be powerless in your relationships. But what I don't like about this definition is that word obsession. And maybe this is a me thing from growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, and like, I don't know, I just like remember kids in high school being like, oh, why are you so obsessed with me? And it's like, no, I'm not obsessed. And I don't think that's an accurate description of the experience for many codependents. It's not a desire to focus on you. I would like to adjust obsession to compulsion. So my definition of a codependent relationship is a problematic relationship orientation where one person feels psychologically trapped by the other, often due to their illness, addiction, and or narcissism. In this dynamic, one person feels compelled to orient their life around the other person's, causing a departure from self and a compulsion to endlessly give, caretake, and or monitor the other person's moods, wants, and needs. My definition's a little bit wordier, but what I like about it is it's really capturing the experience of the codependent. And it's not saying that this other person is trying to trap you. Some of them are. Narcissists absolutely are. Lordy, lordy, lord. But it's not necessary that they are, you know, trying to, but it's a felt experience within the codependent. It feels like I can't make another choice. I have no choice but to caretake. And usually there may be reasons for that, especially within narcissistic relationships. They may have been shamed, bullied, triangulated, gaslit, guilt tripped, all these things, to the point where they truly have no other choice. It feels like a psychological trap. Emotionally, it's like they're caged in. And so from the outside, what may appear as this person's just so obsessed, why don't they go live their own lives? They have been put into a box that they can't dig themselves out of until they get the knowledge, the tools, and the support. It's like someone throwing a rope ladder to you who's stuck in that hole, in that box, in the ground, that genuinely wants to take your life. And they throw that rope ladder and it has those rungs. And maybe it takes a few years, right? Sometimes it can take a decade or more for you to climb out of it. But you can climb out of it. If your relationships have felt like a prison, like torture, like you don't even know if you want to live on, this is why. Codependency is a very painful orientation to relationships. It infiltrates not only your romantic relationships, but all the other relationships in your life, as well as your sense of purpose, your health, your work, your hobbies, your mental health. And like I said, if this was programmed into you at a very young age, you didn't choose it. And this is why people telling you, oh, just know your worth, or why would you put up with that, or blah, blah, blah. They just don't understand what you have been fighting all your life, especially with narcissistic parents. Your brain has been hijacked. That compulsion is there literally because you've been manipulated by guilt, toxic shame, projection, and a whole battalion of psychological warfare. The compulsion is by design. Even if you are not someone who's going through narcissistic abuse, You may still feel that compulsion to be the do-gooder or be a good girl based on your culture, your religion, and other things in your background. This isn't true giving. It's not true caring. This is a form of toxicity. And while I know it is us codependents who throughout history have shown up and fought for the rights and the dignity of others, we must allow ourselves to be a part of that well-being that we are fighting for. We have to invite our own selves into that vision of love. As Melody Beattie writes, if you want to get rid of codependency, you have to do something to make it go away. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Your codependency becomes your problem. Solving your problem is your responsibility. So before you go out there and try to solve the world's problems, let's start with you, so someone else doesn't feel compelled to solve your problem. Okay? The buck stops here, buddy. No more. None of this. Let's not pass this on to the next generation if we can. Alright, so I've got a second video coming your way in just a few days, and it's inspired by someone on TikTok who actually made me realize that I need to do a series on codependency. So they had a feeling they were in a codependent relationship, but didn't really know what to do. And if that's you, let's get into it. Subscribe so you get to see that video in just a few days. And next week, let us discuss how on earth do you get out of this mental prison? How do you stop cruising amongst the clouds and finally pierce the sky into clarity? How do we not let our empathy get the best of us while still safeguarding our inner light and our compassionate souls? Like I said, the answer lies in your deeper self. The answers lie in your connection to your deeper self, and one internal choice that you're going to make that's going to reorder every other behavior and how you show up in your relationships. You are not going to want to miss that. So subscribe. We're going to get into that next week, maybe over the next 2 weeks. And like I said, if you want to cut to the chase and get into the nitty-gritty with me, go ahead and explore private coaching, book a free breakthrough session with me this week, and let's dive in. All of our toesies into the pool. All 10 toes down. We're standing on business with a little bit of Hardy. I'm a mess today. Okay, so if you've enjoyed this video and my silliness, give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And I have a question for you. Pop your answer in the comments. And so there's actually different gradients of this compulsion of codependency. Sometimes it's more intense because it feels like life or death with the person that you're dealing with. Like maybe they have a really strong addiction or a life-threatening disease, or you might feel a little bit milder. It might be a milder codependency. Maybe it's not as an intense of a compulsion. And so I'd love for us to do a little bit of like a litmus test, maybe from a scale of like 1 to 5. How codependent are you? Would you say a lot of those traits and characteristics resonated with you? Are you like me where you're like, I could fill pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and pages on my codependency traits? Or are you like, I've done enough work where, you know, I'm not as big of a people pleaser, or I don't share all of these, but I still have hints of it, still got some work to do. So yeah, let me know, how codependent are you? Does the compulsion feel really intense at a number 5? Or is it more of a 3? And then some cases it's a 5, but largely it's a 3. Let us know in the comments and let's compare. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope this series becomes really helpful for others. So please do share with anyone you think needs to hear this message. This is really life-saving work. At least I know it saved my life. We're all on this journey together. In addition to sharing how codependent you are, please do share any tools or resources that have helped you in your journey. So if there's a book recommendation, pop it in below. If there's a specific tool or a big aha moment that did it for you, pop it in the comments and let's help each other on our joint recovery journey. All right, so I'll see you in a few days for how to identify codependency in your relationship. Again, I'm Yanique Bell. I'm a certified intimacy coach, and I'm here to help you experience freedom. I'm here to help you experience soul deep love. Bye for now. Why are they so loud? I don't even know if it's a tree cutter or a leaf blower. I think they just did both a tree cutter and a leaf blower going all at the same time. I love fall, but I hate the sound of these leaf blowers. Why do we need to blow the leaves? Let them decay. What is this obsession? Well, that's just the beauty of recording in the fall. It's not even officially autumn yet, but hopefully it's not getting into the audio too much.